Welcome to the Jay Kim Show, Hong Kong's very first podcast focused on entrepreneurship and investing in Asia. Join us as we survey the land and discover the greatest companies and most profitable investment opportunities in Asia. If this is your first time listening, thank you for stopping by. This podcast is produced every week with the goal of providing actionable insights to you, the listener, with every single episode. And now, on to the show. Today's show guest is Dawoon Kang, co-founder of the popular dating app Coffee Meets Bagel. Dawoon co-founded Coffee Meets Bagel along with her sisters, and as COO and head of marketing, she oversees the company's overall vision, strategy, branding, and marketing. She's given a number of talks about dating, tech, and entrepreneurship to groups such as Woman 2.0, the Commonwealth Club, and a recent TED Talk with her sister in San Francisco on the theme, The Beautiful Truth About Online Dating. We have a pretty good time talking about her app and actually about dating in general on today's episode. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. Let's get on to the show. Hi, Dawoon. Thank you so much for joining us on the Jay Kim Show, and we're very happy to have you on board today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jay.
For the audience listening in from around the world, maybe you could give us a little quick introduction on who you are and what you do for a living.
Yeah, so my name is Dawoon. I am the co-founder of Coffee Meets Bagel. And Coffee Meets Bagel is a dating app designed with women in mind by women. I started this company a few years ago with my sisters, my two sisters in New York City.
So this is quite a hot space right now. I think I haven't used any sort of dating apps myself because I've been married for a long time, long before these apps came about. But I imagine, I've seen friends using them, and there are a lot out there. So maybe you can tell us specifically how Coffee Meets Bagel differs from maybe some of the other ones like Tinder that most people know about.
Sure. Yeah. So when we started Coffee Meets Bagel, what we noticed about that was interesting about this industry is that there are no shortage of dating services. You mentioned, Jay, that the space is very hot. I mean, it's always been very hot in that. On any given day, there are tons of options that people can choose from. But what was interesting is that there really was no service in our mind that women could feel excited about using. And when we looked into the space a little more, what was even more interesting is that this industry has always had difficulty recruiting and retaining women users, female users, I guess I should say. The gender ratio among the online dating participants is typically 65 to 35%. But if you take that into consideration that men are twice as active typically than women, the gender ratio could be as lopsided as 85% men and 15% women. And you can only imagine in that scenario what the experience is like for both men and women. Men are typically very frustrated because they don't hear back, and women are frustrated because they feel overwhelmed. And so we said, hey, let's create a brand and product experience that really speaks to women. Well, what matters most to women when it comes to dating is quality. And, surprise, we just couldn't find dating apps out there that really, millennial dating apps out there that really put a lot of emphasis on quality and safety. And so that's kind of why we decided to start Coffee Meets Bagel, and everything that we do, starting with our branding and any kind of product innovation, we do it with women's experience in mind.
That's a very novel approach. I think that I don't have that much experience with these apps, but I know that sort of like you said, online dating and matchmaking and just finding love in general is it has always been a very focused hot topic, so to speak, for everyone. And there's a big market for that. A lot of people will pay a lot of money to find their match or a partner. So having come up with something that's specifically focused with the woman in mind is pretty unique, and I think it's a great idea because you hear about these horror stories all the time, right? And I read about them probably like once every couple months, where just someone has a bad experience with someone else that they've met on Tinder and this sort of thing. Okay, so Coffee Meets Bagel. First of all, where did the name come from? How did you guys come up with that?
Yeah, what was interesting is that when we were thinking about our name and branding, we did a lot of testing, and the overall feel that we were experimenting in between was, well, do we want to go for more friendly, kind of next door neighbor kind of feel, or do we want to go with more like nightclub kind of like exclusive feel of a brand? And what was funny is that when we asked the men, they said, oh, I like the nightclub feel because I feel like I could meet models. And when we asked the ladies, we heard, oh, I hate that because I feel like I need to compete with models. And what they really wanted was something that feels more comfortable and friendly. And so we decided to go with the concept coffee. And, what goes perfectly with coffee? We chose bagel because it's such a staple food in New York City, which is a city where we started Coffee Meets Bagel.
Oh, right. Okay. So it's like, oh, let's go grab a coffee as opposed to approaching a girl in a nightclub, that sort of thing.
Yes, you can think of it that way.
So when you go inside the app, I guess it's set up like like the other apps where you enter your profile information, but you have some sort of restrictions or I guess some scarcity when it comes to the way your app works. So maybe you can explain that a little bit to the audience.
Yeah, so the way Coffee Meets Bagel works is every day at noon, you receive a handful of curated batches, which we call bagels. And the bagels are curated by our smart algorithm, which takes into consideration many different things like your background, like your education, your job, your demographic information, of course, your interest, as well as your friend network. We try to prioritize introducing you to somebody who you don't know, but it's not your friend, but you have a few common friends with. And also your like past history. So all these things that go into consideration, and we curate you a selection of people. Now, what's interesting is that because we've observed so many different ways that different behaviors that are exhibited by men and women, what we've decided to do was, at least for a straight community, we actually try to, for straight women, we try to prioritize or show to the ladies all the guys who already liked you, so that the women don't have to waste time on guys who might not have liked them. And whenever they feel like talking to somebody, they can actually connect with them and start talking right away. And the reason why we do this is because what we observed is that, like I said, quality and curation is such an important factor to women. And we wanted to find a way to save time for ladies as much as possible and give more control over their dating experience.
Right. I see. So, right. Okay. So let's just walk through real quickly. So if let's say myself, straight male, go on to your website, to the app, I download it, enter all my information, like you said, and then basically, because you just mentioned if a girl or if a guy likes you, so how does that actual process work? So if I'm just registered.
Yeah. So if you're a guy, then you just receive up to 21 quality bagels that we curate for you. And then you kind of go through them. If there are, any woman who you find interesting, you just like, or if you're not interested in somebody, you pass.
I see.
Then what happens is, among the guys who already liked you, for the ladies, we curate the bagels among like people who already liked you.
Oh, okay. So the 21 come to the guy at the very beginning. You just get that up front. Okay.
Yes.
And so what happens if, I don't like any, I'm picky and I don't like any of the 21. And then, is that it?
Oh, then the next day. Yeah, then you just wait for the next day.
So it's every day. Okay. I
Yes.
see. Interesting. And then, so on the women's side, she logs in, sets up her account, and she just waits basically until guys get curated for her? Or is there a
Hmm.
liking process on her side as well?
She can. I mean, there are different sections in the app where you can do that, but the main section is reserved for curating guys who already liked her.
I see. Okay. So that's pretty cool. And I think that I like how you guys used the one off like friend of a friend or connection of a connection, because that oftentimes is well, I mean, it's like real life, right? I mean, when you meet
Yeah.
people, you get set up on a date or something like that. It's someone that you know, and they know someone, so it's 1 degree away. And so what's sort of the revenue model on? Let's talk on the business side now. How do you guys make your money?
Yeah, we have a freemium model, which is, the app is completely free to download and sign up.
Hmm.
But if you want more matches, more bagels, or there are some other premium services that you can unlock, then you can purchase coffee beans, the virtual currency coffee beans, in order to access them. So that's our business model.
Oh, okay. So, and that gives you just more matches, like quantity wise.
That's one of the things that you could do by purchasing beans. There are some other features that you could access, such as like unlocking the identity of mutual friends that you and your bagel have in common, or reopening chats, or checking if the activity level of the bagels that you are interested in checking out, things like that. So more access to more information definitely is included.
Ah, I see. Okay, that makes sense. And so, on a whole, is the demographic of your user base, I guess, is it more women on the app than men because of how you targeted it?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess that makes sense. And finally, which are you basically? Is it a global app? Are you in like? Is it available in all countries, or is there any stuff over in Asia that's available for specific markets here?
Yeah, so Coffee Meets Bagel, I mean, we haven't launched in like officially everywhere in the world, but you can download and sign up for CMB. CMB is what sometimes we call Coffee Meets Bagel, a shortened version of
Right.
Coffee Meets Bagel. You can download and access CMB anywhere in the world. And we've actually officially launched in Hong Kong and Singapore as far as Asia is concerned.
Hong Kong, Singapore. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can see it taking off pretty much globally. I mean, it's a great concept, I think. So let's take a step back now and talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, because it's that's another thing that we like to talk about on the show, and just kind of running through some successful entrepreneurs' background and how they came about it. So maybe you could give us a little bit of background first on what you did before you launched Coffee Meets Bagel.
Yeah, so what I did before CMB, it was some kind of like random collection of different things. I started my career out of Avon Products, which is what used to be, I don't think it's any longer, but one of the top 10 cosmetic companies globally. And so I was doing internal consulting for Avon US in New York City, then decided to go to business school, and then out of that, worked in investing for a few years, actually out of Hong Kong,
Okay.
in doing special situation type of investing for a while before starting Coffee Meets Bagel.
So very diverse, but also a deep business type background. And so, what was it? I guess what was the trigger point? I mean, that made you want to, pack up the corporate life and actually pursue something entrepreneurial, and then not, with your sisters, nonetheless, not just going out and starting a company on your own or with other business partners, but with your sisters. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Um, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad started his own company with his brother, my uncle, and has dedicated all his life building out his company back in Korea. And so we grew up watching him just, growing, always just putting so much passion and ideation and dedication to his building his business. And that was very inspiring to see. And so the three of us always talked about starting something together. And a few years ago, just the timing kind of came to, you said it was the right time for us to actually start something. Having worked in finance for a couple of years and other things, what I came to realize is that for me at least, the biggest, the most impactful way to leave legacy in this world is to create and build something. And so we decided to embark on our entrepreneurial journey. We knew that we wanted to do something in the consumer space because we want to make tangible impact to lives of millions of people. We knew we wanted to do something in technology because that's what we really believe in the power of tech and power of the internet, and so, yeah, that was the beginning of the journey. And we landed on dating because we thought it was an interesting problem. And, there has been so many studies about how the biggest predictor of human happiness is the quality of relationship that you have with people in your life. And, what is more important than your relationship with a significant other. And right. So we feel very gratified to have played such a important role in so many people's lives in a positive way.
Yeah, it's amazing. You guys have built a household name within that sector. So I think it's fascinating, and it's very admirable what you guys done. So working as you said your father was an entrepreneur, so that certainly helps. I think one of the topics that comes up a lot on my podcast is being based in Asia and having entrepreneurs have to deal with parents that might not be as supportive. I know my parents were definitely not supportive. They were first generation immigrants into the U.S., but their view was completely different. Their view was we were the entrepreneurs that came and had to make our way and fight for survival. So why would you guys do something that's so risky? Why not just go plug into a corporate job, which I'm sure you can relate to a little bit. So was there? I mean, your parents obviously, I guess, were fine with it, supporting that all three of their daughters went off. How is it working with your sisters on a day-to-day basis?
I love it. In the very beginning, it took us time to figure out a way to work together in a way that wouldn't damage our sisterhood, because we, obviously we have a lot of history, and trying to work together, giving feedback to each other as a sister can be challenging. But now I feel so lucky to be able to work with people, two people that I trust and respect so much. And, the fact that I get to spend so much time at work, but at the same time, it is a quality family time. I feel very lucky to be able to almost kill two birds with one stone, if you will.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. And it's something that most people don't have the luxury of experiencing. What are the different roles that you guys share, or specific roles that each of the three sisters do?
My older sister is a designer, so she's the one who designed everything from the app experience to the product initially, and now obviously we have a team. And my twin sister did product management, and I did marketing and biz dev.
I see. Yeah, I think it's a good combination you guys have. I really I don't know how, again, I don't know how these apps are, but I love the scarcity that you build in, and your focus on quality, because I think that is definitely what, a separating point. A lot of people, I think, when they begin the online dating thing, one of the obviously the biggest deterrent is, you don't know what you're actually getting, or there's always some risk or fear of the unknown, which also makes it exciting. But I think the scarcity of the cadence of matches that you curate definitely helps raise that level. So before we look to wrap up, I have to ask you about your sort of famous Shark Tank story, where Mark Cuban actually offered you guys a large amount of money to buy your company out, which you guys turned down. So maybe you could remind our audience about that story, because I think it's really cool.
Yeah, sure. So we were in Shark Tank. Now it's been a few years, but we were very flattered to have received, which at the time, was an offer that was made. I think was the largest offer that was made in the show's history, which was a takeover offer at $30 million, and we were obviously very flattered to have that have received that offer from Mark Cuban. Was very, very tech savvy.
Right. So what was your first? I mean, what was your initial reaction? Was it kind of like, let me think about that for a second, or was it an immediate? You guys all knew on the same page. It wasn't even a discussion that needed to be had.
No, we knew that it wasn't. There was no discussion necessary, because we weren't there to sell our company.
Got it. So it could have been $100 million or whatever. It wouldn't have made a difference. You guys were that wasn't the purpose of it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there would have been an amount where we would have been like, but we weren't there to sell the company.
Right. And at that point, was it still a very skeleton crew, just like the three of you and maybe a couple other people on your team?
I can't remember at the time. I think it was like around 10 of us.
Okay. Thanks for your time today. Just a couple more questions. We're looking to wrap up here. I want to ask you, as a startup founder, that's achieved somewhat of a degree of success. What sort of advice would you have for maybe aspiring entrepreneurs that might be sort of in a similar situation that you went down? Maybe had worked at a couple different jobs at large corporations. Maybe you spent some time in finance. And maybe their parents are somewhat supportive of them, but they are not sure exactly what to do, or maybe how to get started. What advice would you give to that sort of aspiring entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think one advice that I give out to people who are starting off for the first time, sometimes it can feel very daunting to think about like starting a company, and sometimes it can feel very overwhelming, like you don't even know where to start. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important that you dream big, but you set up small milestones that's going to really keep you moving, instead of thinking about, okay, I want to start a $1 billion company. Think of small milestones that you can achieve in the next week, next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks. So those are the things that are going to get you start moving. Unless you actually start moving, nothing's going to be done, right? And so whatever small milestones that you think is necessary to start moving, and you don't have to feel like you have to have everything figured out. You might not know, after you've done like 1, 2, 3 things, where you're going to be left at. And then at that time, you might have to figure something out again as to what the next step should be. But that's okay. No one starts with perfect answer already figured out. And then the other thing is, it's important to have small milestone, but that dream big piece, of course, is going to be very critical in terms of getting you to be able to inspire yourself. Startup is a long journey, and so you better have a very inspiring mission and vision that you feel truly like truly passionate about, that's going to keep you going, when there are obstacles and and there will be, and that is going to be the thing that's going to inspire other people to join your journey. Because, obviously you're not going to be able to do this on your own. You're going to need a lot of team. You're going to need a lot of partners. You're going to need a lot of advisors who's going to be willing to help you. And so, make sure in the very beginning you spend, a lot more time than you think, kind of honing down on, what is the world that I really want to achieve through this company that I'm trying to build.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's easy to, that's not easy, but it's fun when you come up with, entrepreneurial ideas, startup ideas, and pursue them. The first few months is always sort of the honeymoon period where you're super excited about whatever idea you're on and you're getting everyone involved. But are you still going to be excited 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, years, down the line, which is what it often takes to build a successful startup. And I think people don't realize how difficult it actually is to build a company and how, long it takes and how much work it takes. And so you're absolutely right, Dawoon. We have to have this sort of mentality that, you just have to love it to the point where, and be passionate, and to the point where every day you can just consistently show up, whether you feel like it or not. And that's a lot easier said than done. I appreciate that. I think our audience would appreciate that piece of advice. Now, finally, on you mentioned dreaming big, and we've just gone over how you turned down Mark Cuban's offer a few years ago for $30 million. What are you and your team's big picture goal for Coffee Meets Bagel?
Yeah, I really want CMB to be the enabler of authentic, honest connections for this generation and for many, many generations to come. And I think we're at an influx point as to how we form new relationship. Online dating has been around for a very long time, but it's only this today's generation, the mobile generation, that has completely embraced in mainstream manner using dating apps to meet new people. So I think we have a very unique opportunity to be able to shape what that looks like for many, many years to come. I think, I don't really like bashing on other dating companies, but I think it would suck, to be honest, for that way to look like Tinder for like, or it's anything that is like based on superficial swipe. And I really want Coffee Meets Bagel to be able to shape and help enable this, like I said, this generation to form authentic, honest connection using technology.
Right. Awesome. And so, last question is where can our audience members find you, follow you, connect with you, and maybe learn a little bit more about CMB?
Yeah. Well, Coffee Meets Bagel is completely free to download on App Store or Google Play, depending on your device. I can be found on my social media channels at Dawoon Kang, DAWOON KANG, on Instagram and Twitter.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate your hearing about your story and your insights and advice.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care now. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the show notes and links can be found over at jkimshow.com. Come back often and make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Don't forget to join us next week for another exciting episode of The J. Kim Show. I'd love to hear your comments. You can find me on Twitter at jkimmer, JAYKIMMER. See you guys next week. This podcast is brought to you by Hack Your Fitness, the high achiever's guide to getting ripped in under 3 hours a week. If you're anything like me, you're probably working a full-time job or jobs and trying to find time to balance family life, social life, and last but not least, fitness. Look, I get it. I'm a full-time investor and entrepreneur myself, and father of two. So how am I able to stay fit year-round without spending hours and hours in the gym killing myself on the cardio machine? After struggling for the last 15 years trying every workout and diet under the sun, I finally designed a system that allows me to achieve and maintain single-digit body fat for life in under 3 hours a week. Cardio not required. Head on over to hackyour.fitness and download my free 13-page guide that teaches you the simple science behind efficient fitness and smart nutrition and gives you everything you need to know to finally take control of your life. That's hackyour.fitness.